Section 8, TNAF, SNAP. The so-called purpose of all of these government assistance programs and more is to eventually help those Americans with lower income to gain self-sufficiency. But as studies, dates, and statistics would show, government assistance programs are actually slowing the rate of self-sufficiency for these lower income people and their families. Today, I would like to expose the scam of government assistance programs and to let you all know that self-sufficiency is very much so possible and very much so rewarding. Hello everyone, my name is Kaylin Ritchie, and today I will be talking to you about self-sufficiency and how government assistance programs is actually counterproductive for those Americans with lower income that would like to achieve self-sufficiency. Seeing as we got everything out of the way in terms of what we're going to be speaking of today, I would just like to jump straight into the presentation. The title of my presentation is "We Should Stop Depending on Those in Power to Provide for Us, and Here's Why." Seeing as I'm the type of person that likes to end on a good note, I will be giving the bad news today and leaving off on the good news. Bad news first, good news last. So, bad news. Government assistance programs are not doing all that they can to eliminate themselves. It seems as if these programs are thinking less of the American people's needs and more of the dependency Americans gain while being on government assistance. Now, this backwards thinking of those in charge of these programs is simply set in place so that the government can have these lower income Americans in their pockets. Now, what I mean by having them in their pockets is the government gets to decide their fates in their lives. The government decides when these people can get money. The government decides when these people can apply for assistance. The government even decides if they can have a house big enough to what they desire. Now, there was a quote by the Journal of Consumer Affairs in 2017. The quote is pretty long. Despite extensive research into the receipt of government food and housing assistance separately, only limited evidence informs the possibility that the receipt of assistance of one basic need could reduce the need for assistance meeting another need. Now, that quote was pretty long, I will admit that. But what this quote is basically saying in layman's terms is if someone receives assistance for one need that they have, they are more inclined to receive assistance for another need that they may have. Now, earlier, when I mentioned how government assistance programs are not doing all that they can to eliminate themselves, I know that may seem pretty backwards. But when John F. Kennedy created the government assistance programs, the initial purpose of them were to simply help Americans who have fallen off of their feet to get back on their feet relatively quickly. For example, the programs were meant to help those who have recently lost their job and just need a few $100s for a few months to get back on their feet. It was meant to help those who got injured at work and can't go to work to make any more money. It was even there to help those who lost a loved one that was bringing in a big chunk of the income into the household. In other words, government assistance programs are not meant to take care of you for the rest of your lives. Now, I know I've been bashing the government for a while, but in this instance, some of the lower income Americans are completely taking advantage of the government assistance programs. Now, on one end of the spectrum, we have the government that wants to continue these assistance programs so it can keep those lower income Americans in their pockets to determine their fates in their lives, as I've said previously. But on the other end of the spectrum, we do have those lower income Americans that are trying to get hurt or lying about being hurt or lying about not having any money simply so they can receive a larger amount of money from the government. So, although I am trying to expose that the government sometimes is trying to take advantage of the American people, there are some times where the American people can get a bit greedy. But this is America. Everyone's greedy. Not that I'm justifying it. To get more proof that government assistance programs aren't the best choice for people, there was a study conducted on the recipients that received TNAF in the United States. A few statistics that stood out to me the most in this study was the 48.8% of single parents, the 73.7% of women, and the 29.9% of black people that were receiving TNAF. Now, I would like to go through each one to let you know why these statistics stood out to me the most. First, the single parents. This is already crazy. It's understandable why single parents would have the government assistance. They don't have a partner to help them with a large chunk of the income that they need to provide for the house and their children. Excuse me, my index card fell. But it is so crazy because the government is setting everything up so it's more expensive. The government sets up how much uniforms are for the kids. The government sets up how much money this parent is to receive for each child to feed this child, which is more than likely never enough. I just thought that it was more of an insult to have these single parents on government assistance because everything is already set up to be against them. If anything, people with children should probably get discounts, seeing as we all know children are very expensive, simply because the way the government set prices up. The next one, the women, 73.7%. Wow. That is already big, over 70%. The reason that this stood out to me is because women are already sexually harassed. They hear sexist remarks, they have sexist experiences, and which this is contributing to them not wanting to go to work, which leads them to need the government assistance. But the reason that this number really stood out to me is because it seems as if the government is putting their foot on the women's back even more. Women are already having more trouble getting jobs, and if they do get the job, they're more likely to not get paid as well as the men doing the exact same job as them. So the fact that the government would have them mostly on government assistance, it shows that they're just spitting in the woman's face. You have to go through all of the sexism, you have to go through the sexual harassment, you have to go through people thinking that you're not qualified to do a job because you're considered more emotional and you have your judgment cloudy. Now you're on government assistance and we're going to control everything that you get to do. We're even going to look at how much money you spend on food. Last one, the black people, 29.9%. True, this is the lowest statistic that I've said of the three, but this is the highest percentage of the minority groups that is receiving TNAF. So the single parents and the women, they're of the majority of the TNAF, but the black people is sectioned off into the minority group, that is the amount of minority groups that is receiving the TNAF. And this is the largest one. And this stood out to me, of course, because I'm black, but it really stood out because we've been your slaves for more than 400 years, actually, a little over 400. Juneteenth, everyone. You would think after doing so much work for this country and helping this country to be able to continue to grow its prices, to continue to progress in today's world, we would at least not have to pay as many taxes because we already don't have the money. We were slaves that had to get pushed away from slavery, thrown out into the world, didn't know how to provide for ourselves. Never had the opportunity to leave anything behind for our generations. And then we're the highest minority group to receive government assistance. So it's like you have us as slaves again because you get to control all that happens. This is me speaking to the government. It is not your fault. You're the audience. So, now that we know the bad news, let's shift over into the good news. Because, as I said before, I love to leave off on good notes, and good news brightens everyone's mental state, physical state, emotional state. So, good news. There are communities and organizations that are helping Americans with lower income to gain self-sufficiency. For example, Bridge of Hope. Bridge of Hope has helped over 85% of the women in its program to achieve self-sufficiency. The reason that I wanted to pinpoint on the Bridge of Hope is because it helped over 85% of the women in its program to achieve self-sufficiency. It has helped two of the targeted groups that I previously mentioned. It's helping single parents and it's helping women. The reason it's helping women is because majority of women are in the Bridge of Hope, and majority of the women in this group had children. Most of single parents are women. Now, there are communities that have helped Black people to gain self-sufficiency. The community that I will be talking about today is one that was very famous. The dollar bill circulated 36 times, and it was a safe haven for Black people. If the community you're guessing is Blackdom, which was located in New Mexico, you would be partially correct because it was a safe haven for Black people, but we don't know enough information about it to know if the dollar bill circulated 36 times or if it was very famous as people are saying today. The community that I'm speaking of is Black Wall Street. It was located in Tulsa, Oklahoma until the fall of its reign when it was blown up. So, there you have it. You know the good and the bad of the government assistance programs. And you even know that self-sufficiency is very possible and extremely rewarding. My name is Kaylin Ritchie. Have a nice day.